What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka All Fires, and as promised, we got a brand new trailer for Secret Invasion. Now, there are a ton of Easter eggs in here, especially for Phase 4 and storylines that have been leading up to this, but some of them reach even further back than that into the Infinity Saga, and some are very, very subtle. That's the sort of nuance we're expecting from this series, and you see it here in this trailer. We're going to go through this thing with a fine-tooth comb, get all the Easter eggs and things you might have missed. We're then going to wade just a little bit into speculative territory as we are starting to see a brand new power for the Skrulls. We'll talk about how that ties into the plot line, as well as how some of the new frames and scenes we see during this trailer line up heavily with the rumors we've heard for what's going on during the series. We're breaking down all the latest Easter eggs and things you might have missed for the recent Secret Invasion trailer. But first, I want to tell you about my friends over at comicbookdirect.com. They are a brand new website that's really putting the ease of buying comic books all in one place. You can go there and get the one-offs you need. They work with all the major distributors, including Marvel, but the major feature, and especially for me, is that if you're in the middle of a run, you can go ahead and subscribe and get those books delivered to you weekly, which makes it easier than ever, especially in the modern day of Marvel, to keep up with these stories. You can go ahead and pay in advance, get a bigger discount, or just pay as you go, and if you act now, for the next 100 people who sign up below, you're going to get 20% off. That link is down in the description. Again, that's comicbookdirect.com, the easiest place to get everything from figures, mangas, collectibles, and especially the comics you want. Okay, so there's actually quite a bit we can tell from this scene right here. This is Nick just getting back to Earth in what will be the beginning of the series. We can tell because A, he's still wearing the eye patch, and as he explained in his most recent interview, the eye patch is sort of the invincible Nick Fury. When he's on top of his game, he removes the eye patch and doesn't have it for a majority of the series because that's the vulnerable Nick who's still dealing with the aftermath of losing Tony and Natasha during Avengers Endgame. So in these shots right here, and now having seen this trailer, most of this recycled footage from the first trailer, this is pretty obviously the opening of the series. This is Nick Fury, Act 1, Scene 1, getting back to Earth and immediately hitting a safe spot. Now, we can speculate a little bit about where this is, only because he's wearing a huge jacket and a hat, and a little bit later, in some of the same area, we'll see light snow on the ground. Because of the heavily wooded area and the climate, I have to think this is probably upstate New York, and only because that's where one of the old Avengers bases was. But as we're starting to see throughout this trailer, it's going to be an international affair. So what's more than that, if you're trying to have a secret base or drop box, you probably wouldn't want that right next to the Avengers base, and this may just as well be in Europe as in upstate New York. Now, the first voiceover we hear is Talos explaining that since he's been gone and off-world, things have gotten much worse. This is presumably right after we see him at the funeral for Tony Stark at the end of Avengers Endgame, but before the events of Spider-Man Far From Home. Remember, it was revealed at the end of that Talos and his wife were a sit-in for both Nick Fury and Maria Hill. Now, the implied part of this statement is that there have always been at least a faction of the Skrulls that settled on Earth that have been, well, who are going to be the villains now, rebels within the group who feel like they should take over the Earth, and now that has started. Basically, what he's saying is whatever was bad before during the Infinity Saga has blown way out of proportion, and that's ultimately the reason that Nick Fury is coming back. That's why I said, why do you think I've returned? Now, before we get to the next important part of the dialogue, interwoven with this are some scenes where are clearly taking place in Russia. You can see the Russia flag there. This is the red square, that's the Kremlin, where you see Kingsley Ben-Adair's character, who's going to be called Graphic. He's not a known Skrull from the comics, rather a brand new character they invented for the show, setting off a bomb, just basically implying the Secret Invasion is not just them impersonating world leaders, but also creating great world conflict to help them destabilize all of the governments, create wars behind the scenes, and this is implied by the next important piece of dialogue. This coming from the Sonya Falsworth character, who is supposed to be the granddaughter of the Howling Commando character that we saw during Captain America, the first Avenger who carried the Union Jack title. She says, "Not many people know of the wars that were fought in the shadows. Do you feel responsible?" Not just talking about all of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that Nick Fury would be a part of, but specifically what's been going on with the Skrulls in the shadows. Remember, Nick Fury was a main part of why they're on Earth in the first place, left over from the storyline from Captain Marvel, which took place in the 90s. Really, if it weren't for him, the Skrulls wouldn't be there, and so the fact that they're in the middle of a huge secret invasion is a huge part of why Nick is saying it's personal, this is my fight alone. When asked where the Avengers are, he says it has nothing to do with them. This is my fault. I brought the Skrulls here in the first place. I took off after Tony and Natasha died. It rocked me to my core. I never put together another Avengers team, so I set up this threat threat, and I didn't leave anybody here to take care of it. That's why he's been so adamant about him needing to fight this fight it alone, and clean up his own mess. Now remember, from scenes like we saw during Falcon in the Winter Soldier, Skrulls would be known to certain people and groups in the MCU. Yeah, it might not be common knowledge that there's an alien race that live amongst us of shapeshifters who are able to do, well, exactly what they're doing now, take the bodies of certain hosts, store them away underneath what we're guessing may be Chernobyl or a major nuclear power plant, as we finally saw confirmed during this trailer, and more on that in just a second. But certain groups would know about the Skrulls, and perhaps that's why the Department of Damage Control, that has been so angsty, especially in Phase 4, going after every enhanced individual that pops up new and on their radar, have been the way they've been since Spider-Man No Way Home, what we saw in Ms. Marvel, because they're actually going after Skrulls, and they don't know who's who. They know that Skrulls are getting enhanced. They're aware of what's going on, but they don't know which ones are and aren't, and why they've acted the way they have with new superheroes. And as we clearly see Sonya Falsworth now in the same scene with the scalpel, even though they've done it in reverse in the trailer, they make it look like she's opening the briefcase first, but really what she's doing is grabbing a specimen off of the Skrull that they've caught and then putting it in this briefcase for damage control, possibly to mark the Skrull. So I think this goes a long way in explaining the attitude that the Department of Damage Control has had this whole time since Enhanced Individuals, and a really good way to explain this Easter egg that's been running basically the entirety of Phase 4. Now, I saw several of you say it looked pretty weird to see a Skrull using what very obviously is a Super Skrull power, but not having a Mr. Fantastic for him to sort of mimic. And I think this is more closely mimicking what Groot does with his arms. And I mentioned that during my previous video, even though it was sort of a giveaway for this, that it could definitely be him doing a Groot impression if he's seen Groot before. But more likely, this machine that they're building in the nuclear power plant is what's enhancing the Skrulls. And so rather than make them quote unquote a Super Skrull or a group of Super Skrulls, they're just basically giving them superhero powers, which was something the Skrulls never had to begin with. So it goes one step beyond just manipulating the government and impersonating world leaders to take over, but also having an army of Skrulls to match up with the superheroes that we'll see in the MCU, like an Avengers team. Speaking of which, we originally had Marvel billing this as the first huge crossover on Disney+, but long since has that language not been used, and in fact, alongside the release for the trailer tonight was a brand new official press release from Disney that is now billing this as a new espionage series on Disney+. So they seem to have gone away from billing this as a major crossover as they did before. Again, it was just about a year ago they were calling this the first major crossover on Disney+. Now they're calling it an espionage series. So I think it's really going to focus on Nick Fury and how he battles Secret Invasion. And is there a possibility for a crossover or some major Avengers characters? Yes, but I don't think this is going to be the series where he sets that team up. Rather, maybe one or two of them showing up at the end to help clean up. But guys, let me know all your thoughts down below. We will definitely be doing a follow-up video on exactly who we think is a Skrull, and more importantly, when they became a Skrull in the MCU. In the meantime, let me know all the stuff I might have missed in the comments, as well as any feedback you have about who's a Skrull. Quickly, we are still giving away a PlayStation 5. The next milestone is actually Guardians of the Galaxy release, so just about a month away. All you need to do to be entered to win, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below, because it's truly random. The more videos you comment on, the better chance you have of winning. The best way to keep up with the content has always been to hit the notification bell with all notifications turned on. And as always, if you liked today's video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. My name's Michael Roman. Find me on Instagram and Twitter at I'mFires. You can also find me on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, Apple, iTunes, anywhere you listen to original music under the name All Fires. Thanks for checking out the channel, guys. Stick around. We'll be posting again real soon.